Hello and welcome to episode 338 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, I have finally kicked my jet lag.
Yay!
And you could probably hear it in my voice a little bit.
I'm feeling a little bit lighter, a little bit bouncier, more with it.
More airy. Yep.
A happy Wednesday to you, sir.
Thank you, I guess.
Apparently it's drone season. We are recording on Wednesday, September 24th, and this week has been seeing drones everywhere you turn week. Currently, there are reported drone sightings over Aalborg in Denmark. This follows earlier reported sightings of drones over Copenhagen and Oslo. Now, no one's actually confirmed that these are drones to the best of our knowledge at the moment. Authorities are treating this extremely seriously. Police have been involved. The national authorities have been involved. There is video evidence from Copenhagen, though it is rather inconclusive as to what it shows. There's also the mildly complicating factor of a general aviation aircraft flying pretty much at the same time that the drones were first reported in Copenhagen. So that might be playing into how this all got started, but that doesn't really explain Oslo or Aalborg. But it's definitely becoming very, very, very annoying that these events keep happening and are leading to lots of canceled flights, lots of diverted flights, and just headaches all around, whether or not these are actually drones or just drone sighting reports.
So the Nordics is having its own New Jersey moment right now.
Exactly.
Basically. There are drones.
It's the Nordic New Jersey moment.
But maybe not. Maybe it's just a regular old airplane on approach to somewhere. Nobody knows because it happens at night. But if I were a surreptitious drone, I probably wouldn't have standard blinky lights all over it. If I were doing something weird.
Yeah, that's what gets me about this, is that the footage of what are being reported as drones shows that these, whatever are flying, have navigation lights. And I suppose that if your intention is to disrupt air traffic, then you would put lights on. But why not like Christmas lights or strobe LEDs or turn it into some like advertisement or something like that? At least have some fun with it. But it seems just so odd to me that you're going to fly these drones and equip them with standard navigation lights.
Yeah, even if it's a regular old drone off the shelf and you want to do something weird with it, you could just kind of like punch out the lights that are on that if you're doing something weird, which you should not do. But what was weird about the whole New Jersey thing is if you're doing something covertly or trying to be sneaky with drones, you wouldn't equip them with lights so everyone around could see them, unless your intent was just to spook people and be weird. Then I don't know, maybe mission accomplished.
Definitely mission accomplished in this particular aspect. In this case, in the case of the drones that have been sighted over Denmark and over Norway, the issue of the proximity to Russia arises. And of course, the blame is being cast in that direction. As of yet, there is no proof that the drones are A, actually drones, and B, from anywhere, let alone Russia. So hopefully, at some point, somebody will be able to knock one of these out of the sky or get some eyes on it. I mean, everyone has the most incredible cameras to have ever existed sitting in their pocket. And yet we don't have a single good video or photo of these things.
I liked it better back in the day where anytime you saw something weird in the sky, you immediately assumed, well, it's aliens. It's got to be aliens. But now everything's a drone. It's so much more boring.
Let's go back to the aliens.
Yeah.
All right. We'll keep an eye on this. Hopefully there's resolution as to what is happening, how it's happening, and where it's happening from, so that we can just all put this to rest and not have to fall into mass hysteria each time somebody spots blinking lights above an airport. Let's move on to what could have been a much different and so much worse story. A Nouvelair A320 from Tunis on approach to Nice flew directly over an easyJet A320 waiting to depart.
And this wasn't like the old Harrison Ford accidentally flies over an American 737, ha ha ha. This was like the margin of error between these two aircraft was like nil. There was no margin, basically.
The margin of error of everything. So this happened when the easyJet aircraft was lined up on runway 4 right, which is the runway that is used for departures at Nice. It's the longer runway. It's the runway that's, I don't want to say always, because I'm sure there's been some time where aircraft have used the other runway, but predominantly, primarily, usually used for departures. The Nouvelair A320 was on approach for runway 4 right. Now, we don't have air traffic control audio to confirm whether or not they were assigned runway 4 right, which would be unusual, but not completely unheard of. But it would also be it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it would be unusual in this situation because every aircraft arriving in Nice before this aircraft after it commenced a go around, and every aircraft after it landed on runway 4 left, which is the primary landing runway. So at this point, we can't confirm that it lined up to the wrong runway, but it would be extremely unusual for a landing aircraft to even be assigned runway 4 right.
Yes, and while we don't have the audio, the French almost certainly do have this recorded, but I believe this is one of those countries where you can't just rebroadcast air traffic control audio, but you can guarantee that is being recorded up in the tower and anywhere else, and on the cockpit voice recorder on board.
Yes.
Both of these aircraft, presumably, depending on which frequency the easyJet A320 was on at the time. But woof, we've talked a lot about incidents in the past, especially this kind of aircraft on runway and aircraft tries to land on the same runway that are close. Air Canada at SFO comes to mind. But this was
much closer.
Depending on the placement of the GPS antenna on the aircraft, they are either have crashed into each other or have just barely missed crashing into each other. It does not get closer than this.
So we're within the margin of error where ADS-B data does not give us a high enough resolution to be able to confidently say exactly how close they were, because ADS-B data is reported in 25-foot increments. So the radar altimeter data, which is part of the flight data recorder data, which the French BEA, the investigative agency in charge of safety investigations in France, has, that will tell us how close these aircraft came. So here's what the ADS-B data tells us. The ADS-B data tells us that the Nouvelair flight was at 50 feet when it passed over the easyJet flight. So that's 50 feet plus or minus 25 feet, basically, as far as the ADS-B data is concerned. The tail height of an Airbus A320-200 is 38 feet 7 inches.
So even if you're looking at the 50 feet increment, which is probably not exactly correct, it could be lower than that, we are talking about the Nouvelair aircraft missing the tail of the easyJet aircraft by literally maybe the height of a human being.
Now, it's not outside the realm of possibility because of how far the gear extends below the aircraft, that the tail of the easyJet aircraft passed between the gear of the Nouvelair aircraft. I'm not saying that happened, but we're within that margin of error.
Yes, it's not great. The French BEA will...
This was incredibly close.
Get down to all of the details, which we do not yet have. But I saw online some people criticizing easyJet for returning to the gate and canceling.
No, I do not want my pilot flying if they do not feel comfortable to fly. Good on them for saying we're not going tonight.
If they are so spooked by nearly being crushed by another aircraft while on the runway, you go back to the gate and you take that time off and you cancel that flight because there will be another flight with or without you. But wow, so many layers of protection have to have failed for this to happen. And we'd be remiss to not mention the weather at the time sucked. The weather was horrible.
Yes.
Doesn't excuse what happened and the breakdown of so many layers of protection, but it certainly did not help.
Well, yeah. So I want to go back to what we were talking about as far as the pilots work, because I don't want to gloss over that, because I have seen a lot of that conversation, especially on social media in response to the posts that we've made. A lot of comments, well, why didn't they just continue the flight? One, if you don't feel comfortable as a crew operating the flight, don't. And that was a good call. But also, there's the fact that if this happened and you know this was almost a crash, you want to start that safety investigation, and you want to make sure that that flight data recorder and that cockpit voice recorder is available for investigators.
Yeah. If they take off that flight data recorder or the voice recorder, that's it. Whatever you've recorded on the ground there at Nice, that's going to be gone, overwritten by the duration of that flight, which is a great transition to say, hey, we should probably be recording more time than that.
And we are, and we will, and they're moving towards that. But we're not there at the moment with the A320-200. As far as I know, I don't think they've retrofit those particular aircraft. But then to Jason's point about the weather being bad, I also want to talk about the peculiarities of the approach to Nice. Because Nice is a NIMBY airport. And there are very particular approaches to Nice and departure paths that take into account how many very, very, very rich people live near this particular airport. And so if you're familiar with the US, this is like John Wayne times 1,000.
Yes.
So there are a lot of various peculiarities to the approach to Nice that need to be met so that airlines are not fined for non-compliance with the approaches and as far as noise is concerned. Because the folks that live near an airport are very, very upset if they have to be reminded that they live near an airport.
What a shame.
So there's a lot that goes into how this could have happened, but I will be incredibly interested to read the BA's preliminary report and then the final report when it finally comes out. But this, I mean, Jason, we talk a lot about incidents where it sounds really bad and then we look into it and we're like, yeah, this shouldn't have happened, but the danger was not actually acute. This was one of those things.
Oh, it was acute.
Where you almost, and I'm speaking literally here, you almost can't get any closer to a crash than this.
But like actually can't get any closer.
Oh.
Oof. Speaking of investigations that make you go, what's happening? That's apparently what India's highest court had to say about the investigation into the Air India crash a few months ago of the Boeing 787-8 in India.
They are not happy with that investigation.
They are not happy, and nor should they be happy. And it raises the same questions we all asked when the preliminary report was released and asking, why was as much released as it was released? In their quote, it says, where does it go? Selective and piecemeal. And the court said it was irresponsible for the aviation authority to suggest through the leaks to media that pilot error had caused the disaster. And if you recall, there was a very, very brief excerpt from the cockpit voice recorder that went on to capture the conversation between the two pilots saying, why did you cut off the fuel? And the other saying he did not do so, but it didn't clarify who said what or why or what the responses were. It was a very, very small excerpt that would only lead to you filling in the blanks and coming to your own conclusion about what happened. And that is not something common. So apparently India's highest court is asking the India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, why did you do that? And why are you doing that? And why have you done that? It's good to see the court. I don't know why the court is chiming in on this at this point.
Well, they're chiming in on it because there's a lawsuit that is seeking an independent inquiry.
Ah, that makes sense.
So this is a case where there are safety groups and families of the victims saying, we don't trust the AAIB to get this right. We want an independent inquiry. And the high court, I mean, based on what they've said so far, sounds like it might be leaning toward that being a good idea, though they have left it open to the AAIB to respond to this.
Yeah, this investigation has been weird since the beginning with the delay of getting the flight data recorders to somewhere to be read out. So it's good that they're calling for an independent investigator because we've been questioning this investigation since day zero. So not surprising that others are calling for exactly this.
In other safety news, the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States has issued a SAFO, which is a safety notice that provides additional details. It's not an airworthiness directive about particular danger on an aircraft or anything like that, but just a generalized safety notice that operators should be aware of. And this one deals with carry-on bags during evacuations.
Don't do it.
I mean, that's it. So if you fly in the US, you are likely to hear in the near future some type of verbiage that reminds you to not bring your carry-on bags during an evacuation.
Which I think all the airlines have already, but this will make it so that they have to have it, I guess.
Yeah, and it also makes it so that airlines have a little bit more teeth in their, the FAA reminds you that this is a big deal because this comes out of a number of high profile incidents where folks were evacuating the aircraft, in some cases when it was on fire with carry-on baggage. And I know we go back and forth on this, all my stuff's in there. I need things like that. If you absolutely can't leave something behind, wear a coat, put it in your pocket, and off you go.
Fair enough.
Elsewhere, the FAA has met its air traffic control hiring goal for 2025, and it's only September. So things are, in fact, looking up for hiring air traffic controllers.
Unless a government shutdown happens and they can't do the training that they need to do. But we wouldn't want to shut down the government. That doesn't help anyone.
So we'll see in a couple weeks whether or not we talk about the hiring goal having been met for naught. Hopefully not, though. I really hope that this continues to move the needle forward and that we meet the hiring goal next year and the year after that and year after that. Because even though we're meeting the hiring goals, it's not enough. They've said it's not enough. Like the hiring goals just aren't enough. So hopefully we will continue to add folks to the air traffic control ranks. Ranks that are not being added to. The Spirit Airlines flight attendant ranks are going to actually be decreasing by about 800 flight attendants on December 1st. The airline will furlough roughly 1/3 of its flight attendant workforce as of December 1st. This is in addition, or I guess subsequent to, cutting 25% of its capacity in November year on year from last year. This is in addition to the previously announced pilot furloughs that go into effect November 1st and the captain downgrades, so moving captains down to first officers, which is effective October 1st, so next week. Spirit is not in a good way right now, and they are trying to shrink their way to profitability, which, as we've mentioned before, rarely works.
It's a tough one.
So hopefully, as part of their bankruptcy, they can turn this around as part of their second turn at bankruptcy.
Really hard for Spirit now. You don't want to tell people don't book the airline because that only hastens its demise, but you also really don't want to tell people to book Spirit because if they're trimming their capacity by so much, there's no guarantee that the flight you book right now will exist 3 months from now. So they're kind of damned if you do, damned if they don't, but not good. Not good at all.
Not good at all. Elsewhere in the ultra low-cost carrier market, Barry Wiffle is hitting back at Scott Kirby. He says that the ULCC model is alive and well and had some choice words for Kirby, who a few weeks ago said that the ULCC model in the US, at least, is dead. Here's what Biffle had to say. Quote, "It's just absurd. Look, the people that fly Frontier are not people that spill from United. They are people that would have never flown United in the first place." And that's a quote from Reuters, which I kind of agree with. Sort of.
I don't know if I totally agree with it. There are not a set of people who fly Frontier who are like genetically allergic to flying United. That's not a thing. Basic economy exists for a reason. There are some people who may just think I need to fly, so I fly Frontier because that's what I've always flown. But like, come on. There are not people who cannot fly a nicer airline.
I was going to say that it's probably people who aren't served by United at their airport.
That seems more likely. Like Trenton to the other Orlando airport. Like that's just not a route that United serves. Doesn't mean they can't fly United and they would never fly United. It's just that they don't because United doesn't fly to Trenton.
Yeah, I think it's weird to say that people that fly Frontier would never or have never flown United or would never fly United in the first place. I think that's a weird way to phrase it.
I don't think their fares are that low. I don't think Frontier's fares are so low that if not for Frontier, they would not fly at all. Like, it's just not the case.
And another low-cost story that I'm on the fence about here as to the utility and niceness of this particular change, but Ryanair will end paper boarding passes on November 12th. So it used to be that if you printed the boarding pass at home and had your own piece of paper, that was fine because they were going to charge you an arm and a leg to print the boarding pass at the airport.
I think it was 55 GBP, which is super high.
It was a lot of money because paper is extremely expensive and they don't want to do it. But mostly it slows down the lines. But now they're saying, no, we're done with it. You can't print them at home. We're not going to scan them or anything. Everything needs to be on the app. Ryanair says that it's better for the environment, which I guess true. It's better for
they don't care about
Ryanair,
that.
which is true, I guess.
There.
But they say that other things have gone completely paperless, like festivals, music venues, and sporting events. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, well, they're not wrong. I mean, there are a lot of places that don't accept you. You know, you have to have your phone. But I was thinking about what do those things have in common? And I was thinking that most of those things are geared towards younger people who generally have a smartphone.
Yeah, and if you're going to a football game, you're probably not leaving the country where you may or may not have access to data service at all. Like, that stuff generally isn't free for a lot of people. A lot of places you travel to might also have really junky Wi-Fi, especially if you need, I guess with Ryanair, you can check in like 30 days before your flight, right?
I think with Ryanair, you can check in like 6 years before a flight at a certain point.
Yeah, it's not like the US where you can only do it 24 hours in
hours.
advance for some stupid reason. At least with easyJet, I checked in like a month before my flight simply because I could. So I guess that takes a bit of the onus off it, that it's not that difficult to find connectivity at some point, but that doesn't mean your phone's going to work the day of travel. Your battery isn't going to.
I have so many
die on you unexpectedly. You smash your phone screen the day of travel. So
I have just so much
anxiety
about
are
this.
out there in Palma Mallorca or whatever, and you smash your phone screen because you dropped it off a cliff, what happens? You're just out of luck. You don't get a flight home, and you're stuck forever.
I guarantee you there will be my phone doesn't work. Can you print me a boarding pass fee that Ryanair will happily take from you?
Yeah. I would be less upset about this if the airline industry would catch up with everyone else and do tap to board, I guess, because even with like Ticketmaster or major events here, you don't scan a QR code anymore. You tap the pass or the ticket to get into the venue. Airlines have not caught up with that. We're still doing the QR code and scan a physical thing on the QR code. But it would be nice if this acted like express transit on an iPhone, where even if the battery on your phone has died, you could still tap into public transit for like a day using enough battery to power that, but not actually the phone. That would be great for airlines, but we are probably so far away from that being a possibility that it would be nice if that were the case to wait until that capability made its way to airlines. But I don't know of a single airline anywhere in the world that does tap with NFC to board rather than QR codes, which are janky and require your phone to actually work.
Well, Ryanair says that its industry-leading app is now the sole source.
Maybe. Industry-leading app is great until your phone dies, or you lose your phone while paragliding or whatever people do when they're vacationing with Ryanair.
Well, speaking of low cost, because we're covering a bit of low cost in here, this week we've got our old friend Jeremy Dwyer Lindgren on in just a moment to talk about you and
my favorite topic,
your adventure traveling transatlantic on 2 separate low-cost airlines and then flying around Europe on even more low-cost airlines. So we're going to get a different perspective than the one that we usually get, which is talking about premium and lie flats and IFE and Wi-Fi and things like that. We're going the other direction this week. So stick with us. We'll be back in just a second with Jason and Jeremy's story. Welcome back. As we promised last week, we are joined in this episode once again by a good friend of the podcast and sandwich punch card enthusiast, Jeremy Dwyer Lindgren. Jeremy, I would say it's been a long time, but I saw you a couple weeks ago, so it's good to talk to you again.
It's always good to talk with you, Ian, and I look forward to another punch on my sandwich card.
And I just spent an entire week in the West Coast and in Europe with you. So hi again.
Hello, it's been a while.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
So we've got you on this week because we're talking about long haul, low cost, and some short haul, low cost that you both did from Los Angeles to England and then around Europe a bit. And then you split up and came home on the same airline, but to different destinations. Jeremy, you went home to Seattle, and Jason, you went home to New York. So I'm curious to see how well long haul, low cost holds up, given everything we've ever talked about on the podcast is that airlines can't really make it work all that well.
And yet, here we are with mostly positive things to say. So I will introduce the topic and what we flew and who we flew. So we flew North Atlantic from LAX to Gatwick. Then we had a very long self-imposed and then increasingly longer connection at Gatwick because of very windy conditions there to easyJet, who I've never flown before. A few days in Prague, and then we connected onward to Paris on SmartWings, which was a real interesting, and then flew back to the US separately on French B. I had no hand in planning any of this. Jeremy planned it all. So Jeremy, how the heck did you settle on these airlines and why?
Well, I've got a quest to get to as many airlines as I can. Ideally, I'd catch up to Seth Miller, but he's always staying a little bit ahead of me, so you can't win them all.
Well, he's kind of stuck on JetBlue these days, doing his 25 for 25 challenge.
Yeah, he's made it a little bit easier, but he's still pretty far ahead. But anyway, I like trying new things, and I'd been looking for an excuse after Dorkfest / Spot LAX to head across the pond and had some extra PTO to use. So I thought, why not try some new airlines? I was looking around, nothing really coming up until I saw Norse selling, I think it was like $200 on their economy tickets to Gatwick. And then it was the same amount to come back via Orly to LA, and thought that sounded pretty good. And then looked at their premium cabin fares, and they were both around $500 one way, which even for them is pretty low. I thought, well, you can take my money and let's give it a try.
That is real low. And I'm going to give the actual real dollar values that at least I paid for here. Starting with North Atlantic, we flew LAX to London Gatwick in premium. The fare was actually $443 with an additional $63 in taxes. On top of that, seat assignment, even in premium class for Norse, they do charge for that. So we splurged an extra $60 for seat assignment because didn't want to be stuck separated from each other or in a middle seat. Total, all in.
I like you too much.
Yeah, thanks. Total, all in, LA to London in premium economy with seat assignment, $566 US. That is a steal because that's like what? It was like a 10-hour flight?
Yeah, it was 10 hours, 13 minutes. Exactly. According to Ian's website.
And only 40 minutes late, give or take. But it was a really interesting experience because we've talked to Norse before. I believe Charles Duncan at the time was their president, not CEO, but president. And they had a lot of interesting things cooking. And that was at the time where it's like, we were joking like, oh, it's Norwegian with another name. It's the same thing. But I've flown now both Norwegian Premium and North Atlantic Premium, while they are the same exact planes with the same exact seat. The service, at least in Premium, was very different, I felt. So tell me a little about what we experienced on board.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that I had also flown both at some point. And I remember, I think I did Oslo LAX on Norwegian, and I remember nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. The 10 hours happened. It was not memorable to me whatsoever for some reason or another. Norse, though, that's going to stick in my mind for a good while. I've been thinking about it a lot. I penned a review for Mary at Runway Girl, and it's just like the sum of the parts is somehow greater than the whole. It's the price point, for starters. It was the same for the premium class as British and Virgin were charging for their regular economy before you get to seat choice.
Keeping in mind, there are some airlines now that will charge you in business class more or less that entire fare for seat selection in business class. But actually, there are business class plus seats that cost more to select on top of your thousands of dollar fare than what we paid all in for this, which is...
Yeah, Condor comes to mind for that.
I haven't thought about that before this very
and
moment.
Starlux.
And that's insane.
Yeah, Condor and Starlux both fall into that category, that if you want that front row extra, not quite first, but a little bit more than business, you're looking at upgrade fees usually in like the $300 to $700 range, sometimes more. And that's more than we paid on the higher end. But it was a great flight. The service was solid. The service reminded me a lot of business class, to be honest. I thought they had a similar high touch, but without being overbearing. It was really nice. I was expecting the catering to kind of be underwhelming. Most of the reviews that I'd read of other people who'd done it before us.
We were warned about it, to bring our own snacks, because the food wouldn't be very good,
and that there wouldn't be much of it.
Surprise, surprise, it was not only a decent serving, but it was one of the better non-business class meals I have had on a long-haul flight in a very long time.
I'd probably put it in a top 3 meal for economy or premium economy, Emirates being the only one that I can recall offhand that beat it. It was quite good. It wasn't beef stroganoff. That was a lie. But it was good.
It said it was beef stroganoff, but it was some sort of sesame beef kind of thing. Yeah. My hypothesis is that, Norse doesn't have a lot of flights to LA, so they probably go to the caterer. In this case, it's specifically said on the entertainment system, I think Gate Gourmet. For some reason, they probably just pick and choose from stuff other airlines at LAX have already created. So this almost undoubtedly came from an Asia-based airline, maybe Singapore, maybe who knows. But if I were served that in economy on ANA or JAL, that would feel right at home to me. And it was good. And impressively, everything was served in kind of a paper or compostable materials, which I know, Jeremy, you point out a lot that that's not really how international catering works. It's all probably going to be incinerated, but it's the thought that counts.
It's better than the alternative. I know it's not necessarily,
It's easier to burn.
Yes, it will go into flames a lot quicker.
Yes, it's better than the alternative. And then there are some airports, I haven't looked up to see if Gatwick is one of them or the UK broadly is one of them, but there are some airports that will steam clean everything, and then that allows it to be composted. So it is done in some places. I don't know if Gatwick is one of them, but it doesn't have to be incinerated. And either way, it's better to have something that's more sustainable versus not.
Yeah, so overall, Norse was fantastic. Incredible value for what we paid, I think. I am often somewhat critical about flights and airlines, but I am hard-pressed to really say no, right? I am hard-pressed to really say anything negative about Norse other than they took a 90-minute delay inbound for reasons, and then they were actually able to cut that down to about 40 minutes on the return flight. So even that was okay. I mean, there's really, other than not activating the Wi-Fi that Norwegian added to those aircraft back in the day, is really the only thing missing. It was great. This is not a paid endorsement, of course, but it was just really good.
Yeah, I do feel like we've turned into stands for Norse, and that's not what I really had on my bingo card for this year. But we'd like to give it, I have to go out of the way again to talk about that seat, because that seat,
it's the best premium economy.
It's just so comfortable. It's older than almost anything. Like, I'll be flying Air Canada and premium economy in a few months, and I would swap handily to go to the less whiz-bangs, less gizmos seat, that the Heiko made seat, I think it is, that Norse has, versus almost anything that's come out in the years since.
It's the classic comfort seat. It just looks like a warm hug.
It is.
It's got that rumpled leather look.
Yeah, and to be fair, this isn't something Norse selected or picked. This was what they were, the legacy of Norwegian back in the day. This is just what was on the plane, but it is definitely the most premium of premium economy. Other airlines, American on its 7879, like the base seat is still the base seat. They can add things to it like wireless charging and all the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, this is the best premium economy seat out there. I don't want to harp too much on Norse, but if the value is right and you don't mind that the plane might be 5 hours late because they've only got a couple of them and there's not exactly when they're going to pull out of the hangar if one goes tech,
Well, they can't because all the other ones are with Indigo.
Yeah, they're all operating for Indigo, exactly. I think North Atlantic UK only has 4 in its fleet, so not a lot of slack, and that's probably why we were a bit late on ours. But after we got to Gatwick, we flew easyJet. I've never flown easyJet. Many listeners of this podcast have probably flown easyJet dozens of times and don't want to hear anything about it. What I will say is it was fine. It was comfortable. It was as on time as it was going to be given the weather, and it was fine.
It was easy.
Aha! Look at that.
We got the soundbite.
I will say I indulged in the buy on board, and that was also as a US-based passenger, what easyJet was able to offer on board for a 90-minute flight is otherworldly to me. I'm not familiar with that because we don't have such a robust buy on board situation like that. So I bought a Southwest chicken wrap, I think, which was so big I actually gave half of it to Jeremy, and it was quite tasty, albeit soggy. And also fries, or I guess they call it chips. And it was curiosity got the best of me. I probably wouldn't order that again, but I appreciated that I could order fries on a 90-minute flight and they were warmed up in oven. That is just something that even on the most premium of routes here in the US, let's say New York to LA, the best you can hope for on Delta is that by row 3 in economy, they still have a soggy chicken salad croissant sandwich. And meanwhile, easyJet is slinging hot sandwiches and French fries on a 90-minute flight from London to Prague. That's amazing to me. It shouldn't be amazing, but it is.
No, I agree. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again on low-cost carriers. One of the things I appreciate is when carriers take the opportunity to give me the $9 captive audience price sandwich that's actually pretty good versus the Lord knows what they paid bottom of the barrel mass-produced chicken salad adjacent sandwich that they run out real quick, and then B, it's not very good to begin with. That's one of the things that I like that low-cost carriers have brought to the picture. And it's not unique to them anymore, but on the catering, give me that every single time.
Yes.
Something that's tasty, something that's good, something that's fresh, something you can warm up.
And is actually available. Yeah, and that flight was about 98 USD. And that included seat assignment and a large cabin bag, as they call it. So, hey, that's a pretty good value.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it starts to get interesting. Flying the much lesser known airlines, Prague to Paris on SmartWings, or is it Czech Airlines? Ian, what's the deal with this airline?
The deal here is that all of Czech Airlines got folded in operationally to SmartWings. So the planes are still Czech Airlines if you look at the livery, but Czech Airlines is actually the holding company, and all the operations moved over to SmartWings.
Even though the A220 we flew was only 7 months old, it was still painted in the Czech Airlines livery despite being operated by SmartWings.
You are correct, sir.
There were also some other oddities, like our aircraft blocked into Terminal 1, even though we departed out of Terminal 2, and we had to take a bus gate back to Terminal 1 and then deboard the bus and then go up the stairs of the jet bridge and onto the airplane. So things were a bit complicated, but SmartWings is an interesting airline. They are not nearly as robust as easyJet. The price we paid was, let's see, the base fare was $58, taxes and fees $95, a service fee of $14, grand total of $167, but there was a $23.30 surcharge I'll get to in a minute. But SmartWings seems like it's a low-cost airline with nice planes, but only some of the planes. Jeremy, what's your take on SmartWings? Because it was weird.
They are a weird one. They felt very operationally similar to Air Baltic in that they're kind of this hybrid. They have the option to run business class on some aircraft, though the A220 is not one of them. And everything else kind of operates low cost, but you can also pay your way into a higher class experience, which you did with your schnitzel. We'll get to that in a minute.
So you've come straight to it. Okay, but what else is there to talk about?
I've come straight to it, but you can pay your way into that. But it's not easyJet. The app was telling us hours in advance when we got off the plane. easyJet was already telling us where our plane was, how delayed it was, why it was delayed.
And you could track it using their embedded Flight Radar 24 aircraft tracking.
You absolutely can. Yes.
Fantastic. And every airline should do that.
Which is great.
Why don't they?
I think they should. Hey.
Jeremy, tell me about the SmartWings app.
SmartWings did not have that capability.
Tell me about the SmartWings flight status page.
I mean, they put one there, didn't mean anything.
No.
Yes, there is a plane.
They didn't. SmartWings doesn't have flight status. It doesn't exist. They do have an app which you can check in, but it continually just said your flight was on time despite it not being on time because it came in from Turkey late. So it was lying to us and proved to be not very useful outside of check-in.
It landed 10 minutes after we were supposed to have left. Nothing reflected that.
Yes. And nothing...
When we checked on a separate site, it showed it as, I can't remember which one, you'll have to remind me. It showed it as like an hour and a half, 2 hours late. The airport screen showed it as 45 minutes late. Nobody seemed to know exactly how late or not it would be. Other than tracking it on Flight Radar, we could tell where it was and make a rough guesstimate.
The only constant was that the airlines app had no idea that anything was going on. But the plane was brand new. It was an A220, brand new, had 60-watt USB-C charging, Wi-Fi that did not work, streaming entertainment that did not exist. But like Jeremy said, you could wait. I want to go back one thing, back to the low-cost nature of SmartWings. What happened before we boarded?
Oh, you're going to do me like that, huh? I've flown a lot of low-cost carriers. And people who are familiar with me, I travel with a lot of camera equipment. Camera equipment tends to be heavy, and low-cost carriers tend to have low bag weights. For the most part, 98% of the time, if you know it's going to be over, you can either mix and match between the bags, and you can kind of fudge it. And most of the time, no one checks anyway. That wasn't the case at SmartWings. SmartWings, we got to the gate, which, by the way, I think we almost forgot to mention, they closed the gate a full hour before departure, which was
a full hour before the airport's posted departure time, delayed departure time. But the only thing we knew is that no one knew anything. So I rushed you down to the gate because getting Jeremy around an airport is like trying to control a small puppy without a leash. Like there are many airplanes he wants to look at, but plane is going to go with or without us. So we almost missed it.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, we didn't expect the gate to close an hour early, so probably best that you dragged me out this time. But when we got there, they were, in fact, checking bag weights. There was someone going through, picking up every bag with one of the handheld scales and weighing every single bag and then tagging it. And if it wasn't tagged...
And she got you.
She got me. And if it wasn't tagged, or if it was overweight, she was ready there with the mobile POS to charge you a bunch of money and ship it on down. And we had a negotiation. Jason had some extra room in his bag. We moved it over and lived to fly another day. But that was a close one. Almost didn't get through that one.
That was a close one. Good thing I read the rules, and my bag was under 8 kilos, I believe, was the fairly...
Aren't you just a good Christian?
But once on board, I upgraded my experience because I'm more adventurous than you, Jeremy. And when I see the option...
No, I'm just a cheap ass. Can I say that?
When I see the option on board to pay, what did I say, $23 for a meal, granted, SmartWings has a lot of meal options on board. It's one of those airlines where like the whole process is just kind of weird and you can order a whole bunch of things, but I ordered precisely 250 grams of hot chicken schnitzel with vegetable garnish and bread slices for $23.30. And boy, did they deliver. That was one of better meals I have ever had on board an airplane. I feel like I'm saying that a lot on this podcast.
And it came fully plated like a premium experience.
And I wasn't the only crazy person who did that because there were other meals being handed out and there were also even bottles of champagne being shuffled around, which is kind of crazy. I love this. I love it that there's an airline out there who's not a major global player who you could just order whatever you want because there were a lot of options up to and including 2 pounds of schnitzel. I went for the more modest half a pound option, which was like basically 5 adult-sized chicken nuggets with some small little pickles and bread. It was great.
It was pretty good.
And I would do it again and again. And if Delta offered that, or if American or United, I would probably do that every time I flew with them. But they don't. So you got to go to the Czech Republic and fly SmartWings if you want 250 grams of hot chicken schnitzel.
My only regret on that flight in the long run.
Well, now that we have the title for this episode,
My only regret on that one in the long run was that we didn't order the full kilo of schnitzel and do man versus food smart wings. I regret that.
That would have been delicious. But I can feel Ian telling us to hurry up. So we're going to get to French B, because French B is an interesting one. It used to be called French Blue, but legend has it, JetBlue said, no, you can't do that. You have to be French B. So now they're French B. But a lot of stuff on board the airplane still says French Blue. But that was another interesting one. It's kind of the French version of North Atlantic with A350s instead of 787 fleet. It was different. It was good, but not quite as good. Jeremy, tell me why.
It wasn't Norse, to be honest. It was perfectly fine. If we'd done them in the opposite direction, I think we would have been more gracious. I think also French B had the disadvantage of being the daytime flight for us. So it had to occupy you more than Norse did, whereas half the flight you could sleep through Norse. So it was more time for some of the things that weren't as good to pop out. But like, at least in my case, the IFE screen was broken about half the time and you couldn't track it, or the touchscreen wasn't working. It had one of those trackers where you put your thumb over, Jason, you probably know the word for it, but you put your thumb over this little thing and kind of move it around like it's a...
Oh, the little touchpad that my knee kept hitting the entire flight and making the cursor go crazy all over. Yeah, I moved the remote out of the way because it was annoying.
But it's only about the size of like a quarter inch, and it's awful.
Yeah, it's not particularly useful. But what's interesting is that we were on the same exact plane, one day apart. I believe my aircraft said I had 70 movies available. And the very next day, yours said 42, which is odd. But in general, everything was basically a step down for me. The seat was not nearly as good. It was a good seat, don't get me wrong. It was still premium economy seat, but it was not as good. And I actually ended up in row 1, which is the only row that they charge extra for seats. I think it's like 60 euros because it's a little more fully featured and has a leg rest, which every seat on Norse in premium has a leg rest. But it just wasn't as good. It didn't feel as premium. The entertainment wasn't as good. The food wasn't nearly as good on French B, which is actually the opposite of what we were expecting. It was just fine. It felt like an economy meal from any other airline in the world. Nothing really special to it. The service was really good. There's no app. They have the world's worst Wi-Fi on this plane.
Oh, it's terrible.
As a professional in this space, I am qualified to say this, but I believe French B has the world's worst Wi-Fi on an airplane. It was hideously expensive, and when you did pay for it, not only is it rationed by megabytes, the lowest option I think was 25 megabytes for $4. It didn't work. And when it did, your phone saw Wi-Fi and said, whoa, I have connectivity, and the whole 25 megabytes is gone in an instant. Yeah, not great, but what I paid was 460 euros for a flight from Paris to New York in premium economy, which is nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, and mine was a little bit more to LA, but about the same. I will say my experience with the catering seemed better than yours.
Cool follow-up, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. I thought the catering was better than yours. It wasn't that much worse than Norse, but the IFE was a massive letdown. The seat was a letdown. Even though it was in a row that was supposed to have a footrest, my seat inexplicably didn't have one. And same with the Wi-Fi. The second you turn it on, your phone, it just disappears. It was gone in 3 seconds flat. I think I got 10 texts out total, and it was gone. So it was fine. I'd do it again, but Norse, I'd be excited to try again. I'd do Norse again tomorrow. French B, I'd think about a little bit.
All right. So bottom line, Jeremy, was this trip worth how much you paid for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was worth it. The value, especially for Norse, was great. French B was perfectly fine. The only one that maybe was overpaid, I probably wouldn't do Smart Wings again. A, because they dinged me for the bag. That's on me, but somehow it becomes, I'll make it about them. But that was me. But it was expensive compared to other options. There were cheaper ones like Transavia that I'd probably do in the future. But other than that...
So much cheaper, but not as interesting.
It was a lot cheaper. No, it wasn't as interesting.
Honestly, the schnitzel really set them over the top for me because they have so many things you can order. And of course, I went for like one of the most expensive things, but I just love quirky stuff like that. Like they don't have to do that. There's no reason SmartWings has to offer 5 different versions of schnitzel, but they do. And I love that.
Watch it turns out you read like the fine print when they took over and it actually is legally obligated.
Legally mandated to offer schnitzel. Boy, that would be an interesting contract point. But all 4 airlines we flew were new to me. I think they were new to you. And I would fly all 4 of them again. Maybe SmartWings probably last, just because operationally they're kind of a wild card, and they won't even tell you when the flight's delayed. They'll just lie to you and tell you it's on time, and then close the gate an hour early. But the other 3, I would fly French B again for the right price. I would fly Norse for the right price, and I would fly easyJet because sometimes you just don't have a choice.
What a ringing endorsement on the last one.
There it is.
I mean, having flown BA short haul and Air France short haul and Lufthansa short haul, the easyJet, I don't know, it's the same thing. There's no difference. It's fine.
Yeah, it'd be entirely based on price to me. Like I'd do any of them, but it's whatever cheapest.
Well, I'm glad we got to have this conversation because I feel like we talk about premium offerings. When we do talk about the cabin experience, we often talk about premium offerings and business class things and new seats and things like that. So I'm glad we got to chat about the best value for money and still having a good experience, because I feel like that's often lost in a lot of the media that we consume around the best way to fly somewhere, with the points and miles conversation and the premium kind of premiumification of full fare airlines. So this was good.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to go out there and get the SmartWings Premier Visa credit card or whatever, or join their mileage program. But if you put me on a reasonably comfortable A220 with a high-powered USB port and a plate of schnitzel, I'm going to be happy.
Jason's your man. I like it.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of the conversation around travel focuses really heavily on how you can get that lie flat, how you can get the latest and greatest premium economy seat. And I think Norse is a great example. The latest and greatest is not necessarily the best. Also, I think it's an endorsement of, particularly as Jason pointed out earlier, if you're willing to roll a little bit of dice operationally and absorb a long delay potentially, like Norse is a taste of premium for a great price. You can't beat it. Where else are you going to get it? How else are you going to get across the ocean on a 10-hour, 13-minute flight in a recliner chair? I mean, come on. It's fantastic. And it's similarly priced to economy on a major carrier. You can't go wrong. And I think those get overlooked a lot, and people shouldn't. Don't sleep on them.
So we can officially say Norse Atlantic, not Norwegian.
Not Norwegian. I'll remember this one.
The verdict is in. Jeremy, always good to have you on the show. We're taking away your sandwich punch card, unfortunately. However,
you did that years ago.
We are replacing it with a schnitzel punch card. So congratulations.
We're going to have to go back to Prague to cash that in.
Okay.
Jeremy Dwyer Lindgren is an av geek extraordinaire who takes beautiful photos of aircraft and maybe has a future career in schnitzel review. So we thank him, as always, for joining the podcast. Jeremy, always good to talk to you in real life and for the podcast. Thank you so much, sir.
Take care, guys.
Welcome back. And Jason, now I want schnitzel.
I mean, there's never a bad time for schnitzel, Ian.
There's never a bad time for schnitzel, indeed. All right. This is already a long episode, so we're going to get going through orders and deliveries. We've got some interesting ones that I did not have on my radar, but yet here we are. Like Uzbekistan Airways purchasing 14 firm orders for 787s plus 8 options.
789, I believe. They already have the 788. Now they want the Ian approved version.
Right. So this is more 787s and bigger ones. So that'll be interesting. And then this one we did kind of see coming, but it's interesting to see the breakdown and the firmness of the order. We've got LATAM taking orders for E195 E2s, a firm order for 24.
That's
not
a weird
25,
one.
24, but then 50 options.
This is so long overdue because you may know that Embraer is based in Brazil, and these E195 E2s are going to LATAM Brazil. So file this one under what took you so long. This is your hometown airplane maker. You should probably have done this a long time ago, but better late than never.
We'll take it. Airlink in South Africa has taken delivery of its first E195 E2. They have 10 on order. They will have 3 in the fleet by early October. And not to tease anything without having to deliver on this too quickly, but stay tuned to the Flight Radar 24 YouTube channel, maybe for some footage of those aircraft, and maybe for one of the most remote flights in the world from the flight deck. I don't know.
Sure. Gabe gets to do all the fun stuff while I have to pay my own way to fly across the Atlantic on low-cost carriers. It's totally fine.
But it's not all good news for Embraer.
I did not see this coming. All the focus is on the E195 E2 being a new airplane plagued by, engine delivery issues, because what else is new? But the E175, I guess E1, non-E2, is, as we've talked about, the cockroach of the regional jet industry, at least here in the US. It will never die. It cannot die. But apparently it also can't be delivered because its engines, the CF-34, is also experiencing delivery delays. Did not see that one coming because this is not exactly a new engine. I'm pretty sure this is a decades-old engine. But apparently GE simply can't deliver them.
Yeah, so it comes down to not just one specific issue, but it comes down to GE Aviation being unable to acquire all of the parts necessary to assemble and deliver the engine in a timely fashion.
It's a whack-a-mole issue.
So it's a supply chain whack-a-mole.
If the E175 isn't safe from delivery delays, nothing is safe. Speaking of which, let's go to China.
Ew. What a transition.
If you are a customer of Comac for the C919, you're probably not happy because they have slashed delivery expectations from 75 down to 25. Wow, that's bad.
Yeah.
Bloomberg reports that the state-owned manufacturer has cut its delivery target down to just 25. Apparently, citing sources familiar with the matter that wouldn't go on the record. Surprise, surprise. Only 5 have been handed over by Comac this year to China's big 3 airlines when they were expecting a total of 32 in 2025. Again, just supply chain whack-a-mole. Even Comac is not immune to that.
Yeah, I mean, supply chain whack-a-mole, and there was a full month when they could not get the engines.
Yeah, there's that.
Because of the dispute with the US. So that plays into it. But I think the bigger story is that Comac, I think, was a bit more optimistic about their ability to build these aircraft. It's one thing to build prototypes. It's another to have a manufacturing assembly line
and to
that
ramp
can consistently deliver aircraft at a specific rate.
Man, somewhere executives from Airbus and Boeing are just sitting back, lighting a cigar, swirling their cognac and saying, welcome to the party. We've been expecting you.
We've been expecting. All right. The first of 200 737 MAX have gone home, or at least been delivered, to VietJet. This order was first made in 2016 when VietJet ordered 100 737 MAX. In 2018, they added 100 more. Then in 2019, everything that happened regarding the 737 MAX happened, and it was kind of forgot about. And then for a while, everyone just assumed that they were just going to walk away from the order. We haven't gotten the first plane. We're going to go elsewhere. But now they're beginning to take delivery. Things seem to be moving in the direction of this makes good airline sense, but it also makes good political sense for relations between Vietnam and the United States. And so we're going to take the delivery of these aircraft. I mean, it's not every day that your budget carrier airline takes delivery of a 737 in the presence of your country's president who has flown across an ocean. So they were making a big deal of this first delivery. We'll see how many they actually take.
And this is a weird saga, VietJet. I feel like we're going to either hear that VietJet.
Also, they might go bankrupt next week. Who knows? Who knows?
They might go bankrupt. We're going to hear either they've gone bankrupt or they've gotten a cash infusion of $4 billion. But something's got to give with this one.
Oh boy. What a story. Someone really needs to write a book on VietJet. I would love to read that book. Just, man, I hate giving myself more work.
You just assigned yourself homework. You shouldn't have done that.
I always assign myself homework on this podcast. I really need to stop. Okay. Gatwick gets the go ahead for the second runway. There's a whole big plan that we talked about. I'll find the episode. I'll link it in the show notes. But basically, they're going to move the center line of the secondary runway 12 meters north, which will give them a big enough safety margin to allow for 2 runways to be used at the same time.
That's great.
That means that passenger levels will rise up to 80 million passengers per year. So while there will be more capacity, they're also going to use more capacity. So your flight will probably be just as delayed as it is now. Sorry, Jason.
Oh, as someone who has just flown through Gatwick for the first time, on a day of bad weather where they only have 1 runway to spare, I am all for this. Although somehow we cut on departure, the entire departure line just had an intersection departure and just got out of there ahead of like the other 10 planes waiting.
How dare you, sir?
So I don't know, but good news because single runway is just not great.
Yeah. We close the show with a mystery and a celebration. The mystery is who, what, and why is anyone planning to do anything with this ancient A380? 9H MIP, which is MSN 006. It is an old, I dare I say decrepit at this point, though we'll talk about that in a second, A380 that has seats on it that are no longer certified for use anywhere in the world.
Literally illegal to put passengers on this airplane.
They have flown this aircraft out of storage, and they have flown it to Dresden, where EFW has its facilities. EFW announced last week that they are overhauling the aircraft for a customer.
All right.
That customer provides absolutely no information about who they are, where they're going to use this aircraft, and everyone who had an interest in this aircraft, including Nordic, which was the lessor that owned the aircraft, they sold it last year. Global Airlines, which had an interest in using this aircraft in its fleet, has said, no, we're no longer interested in it. I don't understand any of this.
I don't know, but 9H MIP is a freaking legend at this point. This was 9VSKC at Singapore Airlines and then was retired in 2017 and then came back to life, operating for Hi Fly Malta in the Save the Coral Reefs livery. And then it had that epic meltdown where they operated for Norwegian Airlines to bring that all back together at the time to airports that couldn't handle it and it wasn't ready for it. So that was a disaster. And now it's going to come back to life again. That's who would do this? Was it you?
We don't know. We don't know. It's not me. It's not Petchmo Air.
No. All right.
The A380 is still far too new for us. But we're going to keep a close eye on this one because it's just, I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on, and I'm fascinated. So if you have any inside information, email us, podcast@fr24.com, and please tell me what's going on here.
We'd love to know.
And a celebration, Jason.
A celebration for a CRJ 900, are you sure?
I'm celebrating the ingenuity of Delta Tech Ops and their ability to turn anything that should never fly again into something that flies again.
Yes. So what was it? Earlier this year, late last year, there was the incident.
This was September of 2024.
September last year. So a full year ago, this was the incident at Atlanta when a Delta A350 chopped the entire tail section off a CRJ 900. Clean off, just went, chopped it off. Delta Tech Ops looked at that and said, yeah, we can fix that. And they did. It took a year, or maybe not a full year, because who knows how long the NTSB investigation took before they could actually get their hands on it. But no CRJ 900 will be left behind because Delta loves those and they ain't making any more. So they got to fix whatever they have. They did it. They put it back into the air. Not only did it do a test flight, but it went off to Macon, Georgia today, presumably to get paint and put it back in service. Lesser airlines would look at this and say, no, we're done with that. But Delta says, challenge accepted.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the schedule for later this week.
That is nuts.
It's in the schedule for later this week.
I mean, if you got to do anything to a CRJ, cutting the tail section clean off, I guess works because you didn't harm the fuselage or not much. I guess you didn't chop an actual wing off or the landing gear was fine. The tail just fell off. You just put it back on. It's fine, apparently.
Boink.
It's fine. Just screw it back on.
Good for them. Good for them.
or presumably a new one, or I believe is the case, harvested from another aircraft.
That would not surprise me one bit. Well, good on them, and it's good to see it back in the air, and we will celebrate its first revenue service, hopefully later this week.
What do you got to do to really kill a Delta aircraft? Like, we have not actually found that line yet between we can fix it and no, we can't fix it. The line may not exist.
The line may not exist, indeed. Jason, this has been a long episode, but we've had so much to cover. So I want to thank everyone who made it to the end for making it to the end, because this has been episode 338 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz, thanks for listening.